Hi guys, welcome back to another Scout the Defender YouTube video, and behind me is a sneak peek of this episode. I've started the strip down and the prep work for painting blue. Obviously it's a DIY job. I've never taken on a job like this before, so I'm really intrigued to see what kind of finish I can get from a DIY paint job, basically in my back garden. In this video, I'll show you how I've stripped the car down to this point, what I'm going to be doing in terms of prep, and also a sneak peek into the final finish that I'm aiming for the rear tub and for the rear panels. So let's jump right into it. I'll skip back to a few stages before this where I started really stripping blue down and getting ready to get to this point today. So it's really the back of blue that could do with a lot of attention. As you can see, there's lots of wear, lots of rust, lots of surface corrosion, which I'm going to look to treat in this video. Across the bottom, you can see the rear tub bolts. They're all corroded, rusted out. I've already tried removing some of those and snapped the heads off, so we're going to be looking at drilling those out and prepping that ready for some new stainless bolts. There's also loads of surface rust on the panels too, so you can see here, and also if I go round to this corner, there's loads of rust on the body capping panels too, so I'm going to be looking at swapping those panels out too, removing the rivets, sliding those out, and hopefully we'll be able to make the back a lot tidier with those small adjustments. And then it's about prepping it ready for paint. Now, the first thing I tried to do was to undo the rear tub bolts by hand. This was very much wishful thinking. They're always so seized up. So these bolts were getting so hard to get out that we've resorted to drilling them out. I was getting the bolts out so far, but then they were just seizing up, and I was also just rounding the thread, or the bit where the drill bit would go into. So I'm now going to drill these out instead. Just take my time, slowly drill each one out, and then we'll have to re-tap them potentially. So yeah, fun job lies ahead. I slowly drilled out the bolts, taking my time, going really slowly and increasing the drill bit really small amounts at a time. This still took forever, and I ended up resorting to using the grinder, as the heads of the bolts had actually welded themselves to the body of the car, regardless of whether I got the rest of the shaft of the bolt out. Once I'd wrestled the bolts out, I could then re-tap the holes to make sure that the new bolts were going to go in nice and easy. So it took a lot longer than expected, a few cuts and bangs and bruises and a lot of drill bits, but we've got those nuts all pulled out now. I've just put a few in just as placeholders. I've also sanded back some of the areas which are corroded a little bit, and I'm now going to sand this whole trim piece back so that we can then get ready to re-prepare that for paint. I'm going to have a look at removing this body capping panel. As you can see at the bottom, it's all rusted, corroded. All I need to do is remove the two side lights, remove these rivets, drill them out, and hopefully I should be able to slide this panel out from underneath this top body capping. So I'm hoping to be able to do that without removing the top capping at all. So that's the old capping off. The funny thing is, obviously Land Rover paint them with the cappings on, so that is just bare body colour there. I hadn't really anticipated that. I assumed that maybe they painted the body and then they'd put the cappings on over the top, but as you can see, that's definitely not the case. The cool thing is here I can actually get to the chassis more, I can clean that out, and then we'll be able to put our new panel over the top. And I think I'm going to put it on without the panel painted, and I'm going to paint the full quarter. Mainly because I can then get the rivets painted and all that kind of thing, so it looks almost as factory as possible. These new rear quarter cappings are from the guys at DDS, and although the left quarter wasn't too bad, there was small amounts of corrosion, and whilst I'm going to be painting the back anyway, I may as well make sure I've got fresh cappings for either side. The next step, I'm going to look at removing these lashing points. I've been leaving those to soak in penetrating oil for the last couple of days, so hopefully I'll be able to get those out relatively easy. 3 on this side, 3 on that side, and then that's the body kind of stripped as back as much as possible, ready to again start sanding down and preparing for paint. Now, I had a bit of a helper with this job where I was underneath holding the nut and they were able to spin the bolt from the top. But of course, as a recurring theme, these bolts were very much corroded, so again I resorted to using the grinder to grind them off. I don't know why I just don't start with the grinder in the first place at this point. So now that I've removed all of the lashing points, it's now time to prep the body for paint. I've just got the orbital sander and varying different levels of grit paper, and I'm going to slowly sand it down back to the bare metal so I've got a nice clean finish to be able to prime it and then paint. I'm not looking for the most perfect finish because at some point I'm going to put a wooden decking over the top, but it's nice to know that the finish underneath is still good if I ever take up the decking at some point. So I'm going to start sanding and slowly work my way through the different levels of grit paper and to get a nice clean finish. Once the first pass of sanding was done, I then jet washed the car out to make sure I could get rid of all of the loose debris that I'd freed up while sanding. And to get rid of all of the water, I drove the car up onto chocks and let the water flow out the back door. Next up was the rear quarter, and although the corrosion was relatively light, whilst I'm going to the effort of spray painting the car, I may as well make sure that it's in the best condition as possible. So I removed all of the light areas of corrosion on both sides of the car. I'm also going to be repainting the body cappings. As it's going to be a soft top, you're going to now see those areas of corrosion where before the body and the side panels would have hidden all of this. So I'm sanding those back again, prepping them ready for paint. So I've done it, I've finally sanded down all of the back panels of the car. It took me a long time in between all of the rain showers, but I've sanded it down to 80 grit. I'm now going to fill any of the deep scratches, deep holes with body filler, and then I'm going to sand the rest of the body back to 240 grit to be able to then prep it for paint, to apply a body filler primer over the top, and then hopefully we should get a nice clean finish ready for then spraying the car. So hopefully I've done enough. I've never done this before, so I'll be interested to see what kind of finish I can get. So the next steps are to degrease this all, wash this all out, get all of the dust out of the way, and then we can apply the filler and then primer over the top and more sanding. So let's hope the finish looks good because it's taken me a long time to get to this point. I'll be interested to see what finish I can get. There were quite a few holes where the rear tub bolts had actually corroded through the bodywork, and I know at some point I'm going to have to replace these for new panels, but for now I wanted to fill them just to see what kind of finish I could get, knowing that at some point I will end up replacing them. Now this was my first experience using body filler, and I wanted to make sure I used it as sparingly as possible, and I'm really happy with the final outcome. So with all the back sanded down, I'm now looking at filling some of the minor imperfections with a little bit of filler. So I'm just filling these holes, slowly working my way across, sanding them down and then filling them a bit more, just to make sure that this is going to be a really nice smooth surface when I go to paint. So I'm filling some of these imperfections in here in the bodywork, but also some of the pieces here on this back panel that have just corroded over time. I don't want to go buying brand new panels when a lot of the bodywork is perfect. So it's just about filling the small minor imperfections that you'll see. So you can see here, starting to fill these, sand them back and then fill them again, just to make sure that the coat and the paint are going to go on perfectly, but it's also going to give me a really nice smooth finish. I'm now experimenting with the primers. I've etch primed all of the metal and I'm now using a high build primer to fill in a lot of the small scratches that we've scuffed in with the sanding. I'm just doing an experiment just on these back panels just to see how it's treated, and in general it looks really nice. It's given a really nice finish. Of course I'm not going to know until I do the final application, but it feels really smooth. I'm going to apply 180 grit all the way over the body, then maybe 240, then the high build primer and sand that back again, and then we can sand that back down with a higher grit paper to get a really smooth finish before I apply the final paint colour. But in general, these test pieces have been really good just to see what kind of finish I'm able to get just from rattle cans alone. So just to give you a bit of a closer up view of what I've been doing, so I've sanded down the backs. You can see actually from factory they don't paint where the cappings are, so I'm going to have to think about whether I paint the body, paint the cappings and then put them on. I guess the only challenge is I want to make sure that the rivets are body coloured, so I'll have to have a think about that. But these are all sanded back. You can see on the back panel this has all been treated, filled, sanded. This is really nice. This is effectively ready to go for paint. Next steps are to remove the rear door. I'll T-wash that down because it's galvanised, so that'll be a nice surface to paint. And then I need to just finish off treating the rear of this, sanding that down again, ready for paint. And then on the inside, there's still more work to do, but I've tried to sand down as much of this flat, a lot of this back as possible. I've been doing a few test paints with primer and high build primer just to see what kind of finish I can get, but I am still tempted to potentially raptor the back of this. I've seen it on a couple of twisted builds. It looks really cool. I'll overlay some images now, but effectively you can tint the Raptor the same color as the body and it'll just give this a much more durable kind of finish, and it means that you don't actually have to sand it back and get it as perfect. But I'm really happy with how we're going so far. So next steps: remove the door, continue to sand and treat, and then prime this rear bed, and then we can think about what finish to have on each of the panels. So I'm really happy now with where I've got to. As I said, if I'm considering doing like a textured finish inside, which I'm still waiting to decide on the paint colour, I'm still going to need to prime this anyway, so that's the next steps. I'm going to just degrease all of the panels once again, and then I can prime over the top, and then we can see what kind of finish I'm able to get. I'm probably going to avoid doing the tops for now. I'm just doing it again, priming the bed almost as if it's like a test, and if it works well, obviously then I can continue to prime the rest of the panels too. I'm less worried about the interior of the bed itself. So I've also got these tack cloths which I'm going to run over the surface to try and pick up any last loose little bits. It's going to be so hard to try and get a great finish whilst I'm outside. I'm hoping that this stops some of the dust blowing in, but as I say, I'm going to have to go for a textured finish anyway, so I'm hoping it's not going to make too much of a difference. But yeah, I'm just going to wipe this tack cloth over the surface to try and remove any last little bits. So I think that's about all the prep I can do. I'm just going to go and see what kind of finish I can get. I've got my mask on, I've got my primer. I'm going to work back, well front I guess to back, slowly applying the primer over the top, and then hopefully we can see what kind of finish we can get, and hopefully it's a good one. But yeah, I'm going to mask up and see how we get on. So there's the primer all laid down. I'm really happy with how that's gone on. I've tried as best as possible to tack rag as I'm going along to make sure I'm not getting all the dust from all the elements. Of course, it would be better in a spray booth, but I don't have access to that, as I'm sure a lot of people don't. But I'm really happy with the finish. I'll overlay some footage now, but that I'm going to leave to bake for a while, and then I'm going to decide on that final paint finish, whether it's going to be the metallic to match the body colour, or whether it's going to be that tinted blue Raptor coating. I'm just waiting to decide, but I'm really happy with how that's gone on, and it's given me a bit more confidence to do these back panels, which are obviously going to be seen a lot more, and are going to have that definite metallic finish, so it's important to get the prep right for those. But I'm really happy, so fingers crossed that will set me in good position for when I come to spray the final finish. So that's where we are so far on Project Blue. I've really enjoyed learning a few new skills on bodywork and painting, and I'm really excited to see what the finish is going to look like. So be sure to subscribe to check that video out when it drops. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please drop it a like. It really helps the channel out. And I've also recently set up a Patreon page with the link down below where you guys can support the channel. So please go on over and have a look at that too. And I'll see you in the next video.